Hello and welcome to the video. It's me, Kassenberg. You don't fucking know me, but you will soon. No, anyways, today I'm going to be going over basically the ultimate chord tutorial. Um, I'm going to be going over how you make the chords, what is a chord. So the chords we're going to be talking about today, I'm specifically going to be talking about triads, which are three note chords, which are basically what you're, always going to be using. And then obviously there's seventh chords and all that shit. And I'm going to talk about those two later on in the video. So what I'm going to be covering is major, minor, suspended, diminished, augmented, seventh chords, you know, and I'm gonna be showing you how you make those and all that shit. I'm not gonna be including inversions of chords in this video because I want to make another video on that so I can go a little bit more in depth. But I might, still touch on them in this one. But anyways, let's get to it in a second, okay? Before we get into making these chords, I need to tell you my whole fucking life story. No, that's a joke, but I'm going to be telling you you need to know when these chords are, going to be used, okay? So if we go here and click Aeolian, which is the natural minor scale, and we put it in just on, C minor here. So we have 7 notes in the scale, okay? Each of these fucking notes is going to get its own number and its own chord. So get a fucking pen and paper, whatever, and write this down because this rule or guideline is going to be used for every major fucking scale or minor. Aeolian's minor here, but I'm going to be talking about the major after this because there's a similar rule, okay? So we have 7 notes in this scale. We're in C minor right now. It doesn't matter if I'm on D, C sharp, A sharp, B flat, whatever. These numbering of chords and, this formulation of chords is always going to be the same if you're in the key of a natural minor. Okay? So let's go back to C here. So we have C, D, D sharp, F, G, I don't need to fucking name them. You can see them. You can think of your root note of the key as your 1 chord, okay? And then if you count up from the root chord, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you're back to C, which would be, an eighth, but you don't, that's an octave, you're playing the same note. Okay, so you can think of 1, C1, D2, D sharp 3, F4, G5, G sharp 6, A sharp 7, okay? Now, in a natural minor scale, Aeolian, whatever the fuck you want to call it, your 1, 4, and 5 chords are always going to be minor. Okay? It doesn't matter. We're in C minor right now. Doesn't matter if you're in A sharp, G flat. Doesn't matter. Your 1, 4th, and 5th chords of the key you're in are always going to be minor in a natural minor scale. Just like your 2nd chord is always going to be diminished. Your 3rd chord is going to be major. Your 6th and 7th chord are both also going to be major. Okay? In a natural minor key. Those are going to be the chords of your key. Doesn't matter, C sharp, whatever. In this case, if we were in D sharp, our 1, which is D sharp, our 4th, which is G sharp, and then our 5th, which is A sharp, that would be minor, minor, minor. Okay, but let's go back to C here. Just to recap, in a natural minor key, your 1, 4th, and 5th always going to be minor, okay? Your second is always going to be diminished, and your third, sixth, and seventh are always going to be major. Okay, I'll show you how to make the chords in a second, but let's go to the major key now, okay, and just, do the exact same thing. Major. In a major key, these all get their own number and their own chord, okay? So, like the minor scale, our 1, 4th, and then 5th of major are always going to be major. Our 2nd, 3rd, and 6th are always going to be minor, and our 7th is always going to be diminished. That's for every natural minor scale and major scale, whatever, doesn't matter. Now you might be thinking, okay, asshole, that's fucking awesome, but I still don't know how to make the chords. So I'm gonna do that right the fuck now, okay? So first, we need to know, what is a chord? I don't fucking know. No, a chord is basically 3 or more notes, being played or sounding out at the same time. What makes up a chord? And I'm specifically going to be talking about triads at the moment, which are 3-note chords. How do you make a chord? What's a chord made up of? A chord is made up of a root, a third, and then a fifth. Let me just tell you something here. You're dumb. No, I'm joking. So we've got C here. If we're playing a C minor chord, which would be our 1 chord of this particular key, we would have a root, a third. Now, what is a third? Okay, there are 2 types of thirds. There's a minor third and a major third. So the third interval is going to determine what your chord type is, okay, if it's major or minor. So if you give it a minor third, it's going to be minor. If you give it a major third, it's going to be major. A major and minor triad are exactly the same except for the third interval, okay? So a minor third interval is 3 half steps or semitones above the root note of, your chord. So if we're playing a 1 chord, we can think of it as the 3rd note of the scale, okay? But, obviously, if you're playing an F, you can think of it as 1, 2, 3 semitones, okay? So it would be F to G sharp, or C to D sharp, okay? So, boom, we've got our root, our third, and now our fifth. What's a fifth? Okay, you can think of the fifth as either being obviously the 5th note in your scale if you're playing, your 1 chord, okay? But obviously if you're up here playing like an F, you're like, you're not gonna stack a G here and be like, and fucking call it a day, okay? You can think of a fifth as being 7 semitones above your root note of the chord. So let's take this, boom, copy it. So we have F, G sharp, and then C. So that would be an F minor chord, okay? So let me play it on my little keyboard, Okay, just to take this a step further and show you how easy it is, let's map out all these other fucking chords, okay? So if we just take this, well, let's not copy it. So G, okay? Let's do G minor because 1, 4, 5, always minor, okay? Let's just put this here. Obviously, we could copy that, or we could copy the same formulation of notes and go G, or G, 1, 2, 3. That's our minor third interval. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is D. And so, 1, 4, and 5 are minor. Second is diminished. What's a fucking diminished chord, okay? Basically, a root and then 2 minor third intervals stacked on top of them, okay? So if we wanted to make, you know, D diminished, which is our second chord of C minor, we would have our D. Ha 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 ha. Get your fucking jokes out. Anyways, so we would have a D, and then we would count up 3 semitones for our minor third interval. So 1, 2, 3. There, boom, our minor third. And now let's fucking do it again. Anyways, so boom, we have C. Let's just, you know, elongate this bullshit out. But let's do our major chords now, which is our third, sixth, and seventh in a natural minor scale. So, what is a major chord? A major chord, like I said, same thing as this, a root, a third, and then a fifth. Our third interval isn't 3 semitones above our root, which is a minor third, it's 4 semitones. You can think of a major third as being 4 semitones above your root note of the chord that you're playing. So just to summarize, a major and minor chord, same fucking thing except the third interval. So you have the root note of the chord you're playing and then a third interval. 3 semitones above your root is minor. 4 semitones above your root, major. And then you add the fifth, you know, if you're playing the one chord, the fifth note of the scale, or you can think of the fifth being 7 semitones above your root note of the chord, okay? So let's wipe this bullshit away and let's go back to minor because I'm no pussy. No, but anyways, let's take it back to minor here, okay? Because I like dark sounding things because my life has been quite shitty. Now I'm going to be going over suspended chords. A suspended chord is basically, you know, the triad or chord that you're playing, but you suspend the third interval, okay? So technically, when you omit or, you know, change the third interval, the chord technically isn't major or minor. So it kind of, it depends on like the context. You know, obviously if you're in a minor key, you know, it's gonna sound like the suspended chord's gonna sound kind of darker than if you're in a major key. It's when you take the third interval and you either raise it up 1 scale degree, you can think of it as that. So if we took this and raised it up, this would be a C suspended 4 chord, okay? So there's 2 types of suspended. There's a sus2 and a sus4. So a suspended 4 chord is when you take the third interval, whether it's major or minor, and you, so if you're playing the root chord here or the 1 chord, you can think of it as raising it up to the 4th note of your scale, okay? Sus 4, and boom. If we raise this up to the 4th note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is also a C sus 4, because like I told you, when you take the minor or major third and raise it up, you know, it's technically not major or minor, so it's basically whether you're in fucking minor or major, the C, you know, the suspended chord, whether it's sus4 or sus2 is going to be the same. Now let's do the suspended 2 chord. In the case of the 1 chord here in C minor, if we take this and lower it or suspend it down to the 2nd note of the fucking, you know, the scale, the key, this is a C sus2, okay? So boom, C minor, C suspended 4, and then C suspended 2. And, you know, it's the same thing in major here, okay? So boom, we got that there. We can also do this, or, you know, let's take it and use it on the 4th and 5th chords here. So let's just take it back to minor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Take this. Okay, raise it up 1 scale degree or 1 note in the scale. This is a G suspended 4 chord. And now if we lower this down to F, this is an F suspended 4 chord. And it would be the same thing for the 4th and 5th notes of the major scale, okay? And if we lower it down 1 scale degree, boom, that's a G suspended 2 chord. Okay, and if we took this, lowered it down to F, that's a suspended 2 chord. Same fucking chord for major, or for minor and major. You can think of a suspended chord as replacing, or either raising or lowering the 3rd interval, whether it's major or minor. And that'll either, if you raise it, it's a C suspended, or, you know, not C, it's a suspended 4 chord. If you lower it, suspended 2 chord. Let's go to, well, I already touched on diminished, but let me just, you know, reiterate it. A diminished chord is a root and then 2 minor 3rd intervals. So 1, 2, 3, which is D to F, that's a minor 3rd. And then if we take it and just add another minor 3rd, so we could even just boop, which would give us G sharp. This is going to be D diminished. Okay? D dim, D diminished. Let's go here, go to major. And let's take it, and like I told you earlier, the 7th chord of a major key, or, you know, major scale, is always going to be diminished. So let's just take this and see if it's in key. Oh, now it won't be. 1. Oh my goodness. Would you look at that? D major, what do you know? C sharp diminished. What do we have here? C sharp diminished. Now, there's such mystical fucking chord called the augmented chord. An augmented chord, similar to a diminished chord, but instead of taking a root and then placing 2 minor 3rds on top of it, you're going to take the root and you're going to place 2 major 4ths, or major 3rds, sorry. So we have C here. So if we count up 4 semitones, 1, 2, 3, 4, boom, and let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not going to be in key in C major, but let's just show you here that I'm not retarded. C aug. Okay, and these, like, let me just say again, these chord, you know, shapes or formulation, these grouping of notes, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, I'm in C, for example. This would be C sharp augmented, D augmented, D sharp augmented, okay? A sharp augmented. You know, it doesn't matter what key you're in. Let's see here. We want to make a minor 7th, and we also want to make a major 7th chord, okay? So let's do that. C, D sharp, G. This is our C minor chord here, okay? Let me just move this over so it doesn't get too confusing. This is major, this is minor. If we take this, C, E, G, that's a major chord, okay? Now, if you're playing the 1 chord here, you can think of making a 7th chord as adding the 7th note of the scale, okay? So in this case, it would be an A sharp in C minor, but it would be a B in major, okay? So these ones, you know, the 7th note is going to be different depending on if you're in major or minor. But if you were playing a different chord here, you could also think of the seventh as being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 semitones above your root note of the chord. In this case, we're playing C, which is our one chord. But if we took this here and we took it to F, okay, and then we took it to G, this would be a C minor seventh chord, an F minor seventh, a G minor seventh, okay? So no wrong notes, none of that bullshit. So the seventh, if you want to make a seventh chord, you can think of it as 10 semitones above your root note, or some people like to think of it as, obviously, if you're playing a minor seventh chord, you have your root, you add a minor third, a major third, and then another minor. That would also give you, your seventh chord. It would be the opposite for major, okay? So obviously you would have C, your major third interval, your minor third, which gives you a C major. And then if you added another major third interval on there, which would be B in this case of C, you would have your C major seventh chord. Okay, so let's show you how this is the exact same thing for the 4 and the 5th, because those are the major, chords of the scale, and it's going to sound good. Okay, now let's listen to them. Now it's going to go to major. So, if you're retarded that, letter name and then major or minor and then a 7, that means it's a 7th chord. That's not the limit there, but, that's basically what I'm going to touch on here. But there's also, 11th chords, 13th, all this bullshit. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, all of that stuff. And, I guess if you're like completely a beginner, get like a notepad and take some notes and shit. So hopefully this helped.